Hey everybody, Heather here. So today we're going to be working on the alternate Copic coloring of watercoloring card kit Ruby. If you'd like to see if this kit's still available, head over to the store and there's a link down in the description box, and then just type Ruby in the search engine at the top of the store, and if it's available it'll pop up. If not, check out some of the other kits. So I've already stamped my girl on Nina 80-pound solar white cardstock with Memento Tuxedo black ink. So let's color. So let's start out by outlining our image, and for that I'm going to use E50 and my colorless blender. So I'm just going to start out with my E50 and go all the way around my girl, and I'm going to start right above the sole of her shoe, and I'm just going to work my way around, kind of get some of these little swirls here. And if you do it first, then if you color on something you don't want to and you want to erase it, it's a lot easier than after you've already colored it. I'll just go all the way around, right in here next to her hair. Oops, and I colored that little piece of hair, but that'll be alright since we're going to make it brown. And she's got this little section of right here where her hair pokes out, and right here I made this background so it was like her hair was popping up and there was space in between there. Work our way around this little ponytail. And back down to her shoe. Okay, and then I took my colorless blender and I just laid it down on top of my girl and I brushed out past the E50. And some of these lines you might have to go a little bit further. That's why I did it first, that way you can color right on the girl and it doesn't matter. And this works best if your colorless blender pen is full or really wet. If it's running out, it doesn't brush as well, so it doesn't work quite as well as feathering the edge of that E50. But that just softens the edges of your E50 and gives it a nice glow around the outside. So now let's move on and do the ground, and for that I'm going to use B93, 91, W3, 2, and 0. And I chose to do these colors because in the watercoloring kit I colored it with weathered wood and it's kind of a bluish gray color. So I'm going to start with my B93 and then we're going to add some shadows. So I'm just going to add a little bit right underneath of her shoe, and I'm going to come up here to her sole, and then we want to go around this flower. And I'm going to pull it out just a little bit. And then we do the same thing over here. We're going to go around this shoe and up here to this little squiggle that she's got right here on the ground. And then I just pulled it out just a little bit. And then I'm going to grab B91. Let's move in a little bit closer. So B91. And we're just going to go right along the edge. So I'm going to go out here just a little bit past this 93, but then I want to brush right along the edge of this 93 with my 91 so it softens it. And pull out past just a little bit. I think I'll go back the other way too, so it'll blend it just a little bit more. And maybe pull this side so it's a little bit more, got more filled in right there. Okay, and then I picked up my grays just to give the gray color, so we're going to do W3, and I'm going to go right over the top of where I laid down my B93 with that. So we're going to go right around the shoe. Oops. And over to the flower, and then back over here. And then I'm going to grab W2, and just like with the 91, we're going to go right over the top of our W3 and soften that edge. So we're going right over the last color we laid down, which was W3. Pulling that out. And then I use my W0 to just go over the whole thing. And I'm going to extend it out past the last colors. So that gives it a nice bluish gray tone there for her to stand on. So next let's go up here and work on her skin, and for that I'm going to use E21 and E00, and for her cheeks I'm going to use R20 and R30. And I'm going to start with E21, and I'm actually going to start down here on her shoulders. So I'm going to put a little bit right here on her, this little tiny dab of shoulder that's showing. And we're going to do the same thing over here right above her sleeve. And I'm going to do the back of that shoulder just a little bit. And then we want to come up here into her neck, under her chin, and she's got a little line right here. I'm going to go ahead and dab that a little bit, and we'll give a little dab down the side of that sleeve and across her bodice. Then I'm going to grab my E00, and I'm going to touch down on top of the E21 and pull into my white area. I'm just going to fill that all in because I only used the two colors this time. And then we're going to grab E21 again to go up here and do her face. So I'm going to get a little bit on this little ear she's got poking out from her hair. And then I want to go down the edge of her hair. We'll get underneath of her bangs. And we're going to go back down the other side of her face and work our way around on her chin. I'm actually going to give her a little bit of a nose too. So let me turn my girl so I can get it kind of going in the right direction here. So I'm going to give a little line right there just so it looks like she has a little definition right there. Then I'm going to grab E00 and we're going to fill in that ear. So touch down on 21 and push up onto your white. And then same thing here. We're going to touch 21 and pull up onto our white space. And that's okay if you get a little bit on her hair because we're going to color her hair brown. It's just going to cover all that up. Brush up here from her chin. Make sure to get that little patch there on her nose. And then I'm going to come back and fill this in. And then I'm going to add some cheek color, so I'm going to grab R20, and over here I'm going to start my cheek on the edge and feather that in just a little bit there, and then I'm going to go underneath of her eye and give a little circle for her cheek. And then I'm going to grab R30 and I'm going to touch down on the edge of my R20 and pull out just a little bit just to soften that up. And then I'm going to grab E21 again, and I'm actually going to go down the side of her face again, pull out here a little bit underneath of her chin, and then I'm going to grab my E00, soften that line, and I'm going to pull it all the way across that cute little cheek. And I'm going to come back over here and give this side another little brush. I'm going to brush right over that cheek. And let's get around the side of her nose. And I got a little bit right here still. So that looks pretty good. So let's go work on our hair. And for that, we're going to use E47, E44, E43, and E42. And I'm going to start with E47. And let's start back here on the back where her little ponytail wrapper is. So I'm going to put a little bit of my E47, which is my darkest color, right along the edge of that little ponytail wrapper. Come over here to this little flower, and then right in here between these two flowers there's a little patch of stuff right there. Here, I'm going to fill that in. And then we're going to go underneath this little flower, and I'm going to give that a little dab on her hair right there. And I'm also going to give it a little dab on this side where it touches her headband, just a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to grab E44, and I'm going to fill in this back section. Leave a little bit on that one. Pull this one up a little bit further. Pull this one even further because that's got a long ways to go with our light color. Like that. And then we got to add a little bit down here at the bottom. I'm going to actually fill this bottom section in because it's way in the back and her hair is hanging down, so it's not going to be very light back there. Then I'm going to grab E43 and we're going to fill in this next little section of hair. And we're going to pull these up some more. And then I think I'll fill these two little sections in. There's not too much left there. And I'm going to grab 42 to fill the rest of that space in. Color right over the edge of that. I want to come down here and fill in the top to this headband. And I think I'll brush these just a little bit back here just to color that in just a little bit more. Okay, that looks pretty good for the back there. So let's move to the front. So I'm going to start again with my E47. And let's do right over here first. So let's get right by this little flower a little bit. And then we want to go down the edge of this cute little headband. Like that. And get a little dab on each of these that are coming out from that headband. And this little section right here looks like it's kind of coming loose from underneath, so I'm just going to give it a little dab right there along the edge. Like so. And same with this little section here. Looks like it kind of like folds underneath if her bangs are poking out over the top of it. So let's go ahead and grab that. And then let's do each of these a little bit where they come out away from her headband. I'll bring this one up a little bit more. Like so. And here this little section looks like it's pulling underneath of her hair, so let's add in there. And here's a little one that's underneath. Add a little bit of dark in there. And here this little section looks like it's underneath, so let's add a little bit on top of that. And here this one's curving back in, so let's do the back side of that one. And this one looks like it's kind of pulling up, so let's give that a little dab. Okay, and then we're going to grab 44. Now let's go back down here to the bottom. So we're going to add a little bit down here. I'm actually going to pull this one right here where it tucks back underneath. I'm going to color that little spot in. And then on this one, she's got some little curly coats that look like they kind of go back in. And the little valley where they look like they're dipping back in, I'm going to put a little bit of my 44. Let's give a little bit of definition in there. Okay, let's work our way back up here. So let's add a little bit to each of these little spots that we put some brown. Soften that line. a little bit more here. Around that little section that's going over the top. Fill in this back side of that little curly Q. And she's got a little section right here I gave some colors. So let's go ahead and dab that. Okay, then we're going to grab 43, and I'm going to fill in the rest of this little section behind her ear. And we want to brush each of these little lines a little bit. I'm going to leave a little bit for my lightest color in there, just a tad. Use a little bit of white down there. Okay, let's work on these little sections up here. I'll color in this little curly Q. And add a little bit to this one. Okay, and then we're going to fill in those sections with E42. A little bitty bit down there still. Okay, and we'll work our way up here to her bangs. And fill in clear down to the bottom here. Getting skinny right there, so I'm going to chip my pin up a little bit more. So I'm only getting the end. And brush over the top up here just a little bit more to smooth that line. And I think this little section right here can maybe use a little bit more smoothing. Alright, that looks good for the front there. So let's go conquer this cute little ponytail. So again, I'm going to start with my E47. And I want it to be dark where it comes out of her little pony wrapper. So let's give it just a little dab right next to that. And get this one. And then she's got a few that look like they're kind of underneath, so I'm going to give those a couple of little swipes. Oh, I better get this side of this one. Alright, so these that I added up here kind of tip back in, so I'm going to give those a couple of little dabs here at the bottom. And I just kind of picked some that I wanted to have a little bit of darker area so that you could really see that it was swirling around. And I probably picked completely different ones than I picked when I colored it the first time. And let's give this one a little dab up here. Like that. That looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to grab 44 next, and we're going to soften the edge of those lines. let's give this section a little bit of that. Maybe bring this section up there. Gotta remember to add some more color to some of these others that I didn't give any color to the first time. That looks pretty good. Let's give a couple of these up here where they're coming out from underneath a little bit of dab of color. Get those started. Let's get this side and this one. Okay, and then we're going to grab 43, and then we're just going to add some more color on top. And some of them, if they're really dinky, I'm just going to fill that space in. That one's pretty small, so let's just give that a little extra color there. Alright, and then I'm going to grab E42 to fill it in. So I'm just going to brush over the whole thing. And this one here actually has a little swirl that comes out, but I just brought my color down to where it looked like it kind of dips back into the hair and then left it like that. And brush over that one more time to soften some of those edges. Alright, so since we have the browns out, let's hop down here and do her shoes. So I'm going to grab my 47, and we're going to lay down where we want to have some shadows. So I want my boots to have a little bit of shadows over here on the edge where her pants are touching her boot. Like that. And I think I'll do just a little bit down here on the sole on this side. And then same for this, we're going to go along each edge of our sole. And then brush a little bit on the edge of her shoe. And then I'm going to grab 44. And we're going to flick right on top of our 47. And fill some of that space in. And soften the edge of that line. And then 43. And I'm going to go ahead and just fill in the sole. On this one, we're going to leave just a little bit on the end of her boot for the lightest color. And on this one, we'll fill the sole in. And then let's leave a little space for her light color in this boot. And then we'll get 42 to fill it in. So next, let's go and work on some of this green on her pants or vest and her little headband. So let's start up here at her little headband. I'm going to do my greens with G02, G00, and G000. I'm going to start with G02. And let's add a little bit right here where it comes out from these little flowers. And just a dab on the back side. And then she's got a little patch right here showing. And then I'm going to add a little bit. I'm not going to leave much space right here because I'm going to fill it in with just the next color because it's way in the bottom. And come over here. We'll add a little bit over here so it looks like it's wrapping around. Okay, and then I'm going to grab G00, and we're going to go right on top of our G02 and pull up just a little bit. I'm going to just leave a little bit of white on that side. Down here I'm just going to fill that all the rest of the way in because it's on the back side of her hair. And up here we're going to brush up. Soften that line, and then we're going to grab G000, fill in the rest of this cute little headband back here, and then brush right up here and fill in the rest of this one. Then let's move down here to her vest, and again we'll start with G02. And she's got a little bit of a strap over here, so let's put a little bit of our G02 over here. And I'm going to put a little bit on top of that flower. And same thing for this side. And she's got a little patch showing right between her shirt there. And I actually left the lace on her vest just plain. I didn't color it in. And then let's go back here and brush a little bit of our dark underneath of her back of her vest. And I use this dark color to color in the little pocket, the top of the pocket. And then I'm going to grab G00. And I'm going to fill this side in because there's not much space left there. And we'll give this one a little brush and this one a little brush and leave a little bit of white there. And then for the bottom of her vest, I'm going to start the back of this little pocket. And then we're going to come up here and bring our color around. Brush that line. I'm going to go right out here to the edge underneath of her sleeve. And I'm going to grab E000. We're going to fill in the top of this vest and the rest of this pocket and the rest of her vest. And if you wanted it to be darker, you just go over it again a second time. I'm going to go down here and work on her pants, and for that again I'm going to start with G02, and I'm going to do right here. She's got a seam in her pants, so I'm going to go right down that seam, and then we'll get the cuff, and she's got a little bit dips, her cuff dips in right there, so I'm going to give that a little dab, and I'm going to very lightly do that side, and then I wanted to give this little pocket just a little bit, so I'm going to go right along where those little dots are. And then for this side, we'll get the inside of the seam, or her cuff. And we'll get the cuff on this side. She's got a little bit that dips in there. And let's go right up the back of her jeans. And again, we want to get, oh, let's go underneath this ruffle for this lace here, too. Give a little bit of a shadow in there. And I'm going to get the inside of that pocket. And then I'm going to grab my G00. And there's not much space left on that pocket, so I'm going to fill that in. And we're just going to come down here and brush on top of our O2, just so that we can soften that line. Fill that pocket in, go along the edge of this green, and I think I'm going to bring this green out here towards the middle of this little heart, like that, and then we're going to fill it in with G000. Here and brush on some of this again because I need to soften that line just a little bit more. And again, if you wanted her pants to be darker, you just go over them a second time. Next, let's go up here and work on her shirt. And so for her shirt, I did the sleeves and the inside. And for that, we're going to use B91 and the Colorless Splendor. So I'm going to take my B91 and I'm just very lightly going to go right next to this lace from her vest. And then for her sleeve, I'm going to brush up just a tiny bit. I'd say maybe 1/8 of an inch, because I didn't fill it in all the way. Then I'm going to take my Colorless Splendor and I'm just going to go right over the edge of that and just brush it out here into the white, just so it softens it a bit, but it gives it a shadow here at the bottom of her sleeve and on her shirt. And I'm going to do the bottom of her sleeve again. So I'm going to grab my B91 and lightly brush some color on there. And then take my Colorless Splendor and just brush right over the edge of that. And then I just left it like that. Okay, and then for her sleeves, I use W3 and W00. So I'm going to grab my W3 and we're going to add a little bit right next to this little vest pocket, or her little strap there. And then down here, I went along the back of her sleeve, and then I went down each of these little lines for her little pleats in her sleeve. And we'll get her ruffle. It was just to add a little bit of color. And then I took my W00 and just brushed over that line. I didn't fill it all the way in, like in the middle of their sleeve up here. I just was using the W00 to soften that dark color, but still leave some white. And here, there, I got green on her sleeve right here. Let's use our Colorless Splendor to push that up. Get rid of that. And that's all I did for those sleeves. So now let's go work on this greenery right here. And for that, I'm going to use G24, G12, and G20. I'm going to start with G24. And I just kind of went very lightly, adding a little bit of dark around some of the leaves. Oops, and I forgot to do this little sleeve up here, so I'm going to take my W00 and just lightly go over that line right there. I can tell it's so dark that I didn't do it. Okay, and back to my 24. So go right underneath some of these leaves, adding some shadows. Let's get a couple up here too. And some of the areas are pretty close, so you're going to actually fill in the area. And then she's got some leaves that are kind of like poking out up here. I'm going to use my 24 to just fill those in. And she's actually got a couple right over here on her hair that I'm going to put my 24 in there just so I can be done with those. Okay, I think that greenery looks pretty good. So now I'm going to grab my G12. I'm going to fill in some more space. So I'm going to go up here and fill in. And I'm touching down on top of my 24. I'm going to leave my lightest color mostly for over here where the sun is shining on it. Work my way around till I get over here. Then I'm going to take my G20. I'm going to fill in this little section that I left open. I'm also just going to brush a little bit over some of these little sections in between. Just add a little bit of this yellowish green to my color. to go back to my G24 because she's got a couple of little leaves right here. I'm going to color those. And then on this flower right here, it's got this weird little bump thing. I don't know what that is. It just doesn't really belong there in my opinion, but I'm just going to fill it in with some greenery just so it's got some color right there. Alright, so that leaves us with these pretty flowers. So I'm going to start up here with the flowers in her hair, and for our flowers we're going to use RV29, RV09, and RV02. And for the little dots, I'm just going to fill them in with my RV29, and then we're going to add a little bit of color to each of these little flowers. And that one didn't have a center, so that worked out pretty good. Then we're going to go down here, and we're going to do the same thing down here. Just going to add a little bit of color to each of these little petals, and a little bit along the bottom of that one. Add some color in there. Let's do this one. And work my way around. Trying to be careful not to get it in the center of those because we're going to paint those yellow. Okay, and then she's got some of these little circles, so I'm going to go ahead and fill those in. And then we'll get this one down here on the ground. And then we're going to grab RV09 and start back up here at flowers in her hair. And I'm actually going to brush right over the top of my RV29 and just add a little bit more color. I just used that as a base to make it darker underneath. But I really want to have, because it's more of a red color and this is more of a pink, so I want to add some more of that on top. And we'll go down here and brush some of these. Just work our way around. And they're flowers, so they don't have to be perfect. I like them to be all multicolored. I think I did this one. And we want to get this one down here on the ground. And then we are going to fill that in with RV02. I'm going to go back up here to the top where her flowers are in her hair. And I'm just going to take my pen and swirl it around and move that ink around at the end in her flower. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with these flowers down here. I'm just going to use my pen and swirl it around in there, soften that edge. And I don't mind that mine have a little bit of lines left. If you hate that, you might want to swirl them a little bit more. Just work my way around. And get down here. You could also leave a little bit of white at the end if you wanted. That would look really cute too. And then last but not least, this little cute one down here. And then to finish them off, I used Y35 to fill in the centers. There's only a couple of them, so I just filled those in. So that is our finished Copic coloring of Ruby. Isn't she adorable? So head over to the store and pick up a kit, and you can color along with me. I hope you had fun watching today, and we'll see you next time. Bye!